Hey guys, we're in Matthew chapter 18, starting verse 15. It says, "Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother." Okay, so Jesus here is talking about how to reconcile uh, problems between brothers and sisters in Christ, and we rarely see, sadly, this acted out in this way. Most of the time, people get mad at somebody, and then it's just how it is. They either quit talking to them, or they, you know, whatever can lead to where somebody leaves the church, or they, all kinds of problems. Destroy friendships. So he says, if okay. So first off, that's the question: is did your brother, if they trespass against you, if they sin against you, do something directly, that is an offense to you, they hurt you in some way and sinned against you, or you feel that way about it, then you go and you tell him. Okay, you don't tell his neighbor, you don't tell his wife, you don't tell her husband, you don't, you go to them and you say, hey, here's the issue I have, and it says, tell him his fault and keep it between, look at this, between thee and him alone. Okay, so then, what it boils down to is it's between the two of you. It's, it stays contained, and it may be that you go to him and you begin to talk it out, and he says, oh man, I didn't mean to do that. I wasn't trying to hurt your feelings. I didn't realize that what was going on, or they may say, you know what, you're right. I did wrong, and and I'm sorry. I messed up, and thank you for coming to me and letting me know that this was coming between us, and now let's try to work this out together, and let's keep serving Jesus together. Let's keep doing the things God's called us to do together. Let's move past the problem we have here, and so. Sometimes that happens. Then there may be times where you come to that person and you tell them that, and they say, you know what, I don't see where I did anything wrong, and they may come back at you and they may say, well, I think you're, I think you're the one that's got an issue here, and that I didn't do anything, and so that may happen. Okay, so at that point, he says, if he hears you and you can talk it out and come to an agreement, and of course at that point you may go, you know what, you're right. After talking to you, I may have misunderstood what was happening, and let's just put this behind us and move forward. Or you may say, you know what, no, you've offended me and you're unwilling to deal with that. So then the Bible gives instruction for that. So first thing, if you can work it out, guess what? You've gained a brother. You're going to be closer to each other probably going forward, because you've made it through this issue. And then he says, but if he'll not hear you, so if the person won't talk to you or just won't listen, or you guys, they can't come to a resolution on the issue, then he says, take with thee one or two more, then the mouth of two or three witnesses, every word may be established. So, now what you're going to do is go to, one or two more, take with thee one or two more. So you're going to go to somebody else and say, you know what, this happened. I went to them. They wouldn't listen to me. They wouldn't talk to me about it. And you're able to share with those folks, here's what the issue is. Okay. Now, they may tell you at that point, you know what, I think you're the one with the issue. And, I think there's a reason they didn't want to talk to you, is because you're wrong. So you get discuss the issue at that point, and those folks hopefully will have enough integrity that they don't just go along, but that they really look at the situation from what it is, and give you a fair assessment as to where things stand. Now then you may come to them, and so that may be a point where then you had to say, oh, you know what, you're right. I need to go back to them now and try to work this out together. Or it may be that they say, you know what, you're right. You have an issue. It's legitimate. There's a problem here, and so we'll go with you, and we'll kind of moderate this and let you guys both kind of share your sides of it. Or maybe you might even convince them that you were wronged, and they go and they say, all right, let's go talk to them. And then when the two of you get together and there's a witness, then they may say, you know what, you're wrong. Either side, they can either, or they may, in more times than not, they may say, you know what, both of you have some fault here, and you both need to come together, and it's kind of like that. I've said many times, that three sides to every story thing, yours, mine, and the truth. And so a lot of times it may take somebody else coming in to say, you know what, I've heard both of you out, and I can see where you come from, I can see where you come from, and so they may help you guys to make some kind of a compromise there, or to come to an understanding of where both of you are coming from, and then hopefully reconcile that, okay? And hopefully then, hey, we're good. Now, if those folks come and they hear you both out, and then they say, they go with you, and you face this person, and then all of a sudden, and they just are unrepentant, and both you and the ones that you brought with you all are in agreement that, what, this person has committed a sin against you, and so it needs to be dealt with, okay? Then, okay, if they won't deal with it, they won't repent, then the Bible tells us here, if he shall neglect to hear them, so after they've heard you out and then they speak truth into that person's life and they still won't listen, then if he neglect to hear them, tell it to the church. So at that point, then you have to go to the church body and say, you know what, this is what's happened. You have to call a special meeting, go to the pastor, say, hey, here's what's going on, and you may have to come before the church at that point. And you see the steps though that God gives. I mean, he's trying to reconcile. Most people don't do any of this. Most people get mad, and then that's that. They either hold a grudge or they just totally cut that person out of their life. That's typically how, sadly, many Christians deal with conflict, and they don't apologize, or they don't try to work things out. They just, it's kind of like kids who get mad and I'm taking my toys and I'm going to the house, or well, if they're not going to own up to what they've done, then I'm not, then I'm just not going to talk to them again, this kind of thing. So it says if you get to that point where you've gone through all this, okay, and you go to the church and he won't hear the church, so then the church agrees, hey, you know what, this person has committed an offense, and we need to talk to them about it, and this is church discipline, okay? This is what church discipline looks like. Then let him be to thee as a heathen man and a publican. So it says at that point, you've got to turn them over, basically like Paul said, he turned them over to Satan to let the devil deal with them a while, and hopefully get them to a place where they'll repent and turn back to God. Doesn't mean you don't pray for them, but it means that you don't fellowship with them, okay? And that can be hard too, times. But that's after you've gone through all these steps. And he says, verily I say unto you, whatsoever you shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, whatsoever you shall loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Again I say unto you that if two of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven. So there's a power in binding together. I think this kind of gets misinterpreted at times. We look at the context, and we are to bind ourselves to other believers. We're to have close relationships. One of the reasons that reconciliation needs to come is because prayer is hindered when we are not walking in agreement together. When we're walking in unforgiveness, okay? And this is not just talking about we agree on a certain prayer request. I think sometimes we think, prayer in agreement just means we both agree that we want the same thing. Okay, I think it goes beyond that, because when you look at the context of this, agreement is that we're walking in a fellowship together. We're walking in a spirit of reconciliation. We're forgiving each other. We're serving God together. That's the overall arching picture here is believers who are walking in fellowship with God and fellowship with one another, walking in a spirit of reconciliation and forgiveness. And when that happens, that group of people begins to ask for things that God does incredibly. And also there's an element of spiritual warfare involved there, of binding and loosing, that we're praying, we're standing together in spiritual warfare. See, Satan knows that a house that's divided against itself won't be able to stand. So if we don't forgive each other and we don't walk in agreement, then guess what? Our prayers are going to be hindered. Now that deals with married couples, that deals with churches, that deals with whatever, families, communities. Even when we can't come to walk in love and fellowship and agreement together and forgiveness, then guess what? It hinders our prayer, and he opens the door for Satan to wage war against us and divide us and then bring us down. Okay, so that's one of the problems we have in our country right now. So much, there's no agreement, there's definitely no working things out. It's just outright hatred toward whoever doesn't agree with us, and silencing those that don't agree with us. So then he goes on. He says, if two agree is touching this thing, it'll be done. For where two or three are gathered, verse 20, together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. So that's the thing. When we come together in agreement, in love and reconciliation, in the spirit of unity, then guess what? Jesus comes in the midst of that, and he begins to bless that. He begins to work through that. He can work through a people who are walking in agreement together. Okay, and that's where we are to strive to do, is to to walk in agreement together, in following after the Lord. And so as he speaks this, he says, "I'll be in the midst there." We want Jesus in the midst, right? We want him in the midst of our churches. We want him in the midst of everything that we do. He says, "Then came Peter to him and said, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? 7 times?" Peter's trying to put a limit on God's grace. Okay, Peter is, the Lord gives him these things, and he says, if my brother offends me, how many times should I forgive him? Because there are folks that, in going through all these steps, they want to get that brother, and shame him, but then they don't want to forgive him for what he's done. Okay, so they want to shame him for it, and they want to sometimes, just have nothing to do with him, but then they don't want to forgive him. Okay, so Peter suddenly in the midst of all this said, well, yeah, but how many times, how many times shall I do this? Should I, once he reaches 7 times, in other words, Peter's keeping count of how many offenses, he's wanting to keep count of how many offenses somebody has done against him. Now imagine if God only forgave us 7 times. Imagine if God said to us, you know what, you got 7 chances, and once you mess up the 7th time, I'm done with you. Guys, we'd be doomed. We'd be hopeless. And and so Peter, though, throws this out there. Once they messed up 7 times, and that's a number of completion, right? That's a number of perfection and completion. So doesn't that mean that once they've messed up 7 times, I'm finished with them? I'm done with them? That's what Peter's trying to allude to here. But Jesus said to him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. In fact, he didn't mean that just in over a lifetime, but he said in a day. One of the Gospels, I can't remember which one it is. I meant to look that up before I taught this, but it says over a day, 7 times 70. And by the way, when Jesus says that, he doesn't mean for you to get out your calculator or to multiply up, 7 times 70. What he's saying is, you know what? You ought to always walk in forgiveness. No matter how many times a person wrongs you, doesn't mean that you don't put some guards up. Doesn't mean that you don't, and there's a difference between forgiveness and trust. But it means we forgive. We want the best for people, and we do our best to love them. And, I'm telling you, your life will be a whole lot healthier if you don't hold grudges. Your life will be a whole lot healthier and more blessed if you'll let things go, and if you'll forgive other people where they failed you. You're going to find a lot of people failed you, didn't know they failed you. You're going to find a lot of people have offended you, didn't even mean to offend you. They're caught up in their own stuff, and it wasn't intentional oftentimes. And even those that are intentional, guess what? They need grace too. They need forgiveness. And God calls us to offer forgiveness to them. So, guys, let's strive to be good examples of the grace of God. Let's think about When we think about others and the offense that they brought toward us, let's always remember the offense that we brought to Jesus. Let's always remember how many times we've sinned against him, and then remember how many times that he has forgiven us of those sins. And then let's offer that same kind of grace and mercy and forgiveness that we've received. Let's offer that to those around us. All right, guys, God bless you. We're going to close out tonight. I believe I'm going to start doing these a little shorter. I'm having trouble loading them up, so it may take longer for us to get through these books, but it'll be a little shorter, maybe a little quicker for you guys to get through in the day, and take us a little longer to get through the books, but I think that's going to how I'm going to have to do it, try to get these loaded up. So God bless y'all. I'm going to close it out there. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.